So in order to test whether minds can be connected at a distance, there are several different classes of experiments that have been developed. The one that's probably the most mature at this point is called the Gansfeld telepathy method. Gansfeld is a German word meaning whole field, and it's a kind of sensory deprivation technique that was developed by Gestalt therapists in the 1930s. And the idea is that there are two people involved. One will be the receiver of information, the other will be the sender of information. Sender and receiver suggests a signal model, but we only use those labels as a way of describing what will happen in the experiment without assuming there's any signal at all. So the receiver is put into this condition called the Ganzfeld, where they have a half a ping pong ball over each eye. You tape it down. You shine a red light into their face, and so all they can see everywhere is their eyes are open, so they can only see red, like a dim red image. And then they wear headphones that play white noise or sometimes pink noise, so they can't hear anything. And they sit in a comfy chair so they don't really feel anything. And so it's not really sensory deprivation as much as an unpatterned sensory stimulus, which very quickly it fades into the background because nothing is happening. So that encourages your mind, which is still quite awake because your eyes are open, even though you're in a very relaxed condition, to become more sensitive to what's happening on the inside. And that's the whole point of it. So you put the receiver in that condition, and 20 minutes later, you have a large pool of pictures in groups of 4. So the 4 pictures are selected to be as different from each other as they possibly can. Usually each picture is designed so that it has a single theme in it. So you don't want to show like a picture of a circus because there's a gazillion things in there. You want to show a picture of a tiger or a picture of a clown or just one thing. You give that to the sender, randomly selected, so nobody knows in advance what that's going to be. The sender and receiver had no idea what these pictures were going to be. You give the sender this randomly selected picture, and you ask them for the next 20 minutes to mentally connect with your partner at a distance and send this kind of information. And some of the versions of this experiment, there's a one-way audio link from the receiver back to the sender. And the receiver is told, speak aloud anything that comes to mind, so we can capture in real time what your impressions are. Well, that's fed back to the sender, so the sender can adjust their mental sending strategy to try to evoke the response, which matches what they're trying to send. So that goes on for 20 minutes, and then the sending period stops. A investigator who doesn't know what any of the targets are will go and take the receiver, out of the Ganzfeld condition, show them 4 pictures, one of which was the one that was being sent, along with 3 decoys. And so their task is, which one of these 4 best matches your impression? So it's a 25% gain. So over the long run, you'd expect that on average, you get 25%. Well, after almost 5,000 sessions of the type that I just described, which is reported in over 100 publications by at least 20 labs around the world over the last 5 decades or so, the overall result is between 30% and 32%. That means that this difference between 5% over chance to about 7% doesn't sound like much, but when you figure the statistics on it, you're dealing with something which is around a 6 sigma result, so like 1 billion to 1 or beyond. So at this point, you have to figure, well, what else could it have been? Could it be some kind of sensory information leakage between one and the other? Could there have been a confederate? Could there be a mistake in the protocol? Was it not randomized? And a other long list, a due diligence list that goes into the design of the experiment from the get-go to make sure that it's not any of those. So that's how these experiments are done. And over the years, of course, this has attracted a lot of skeptical comments. And so each new generation of experimental protocols took those criticisms into account. So by probably about 3 decades ago, it was at the point where major skeptics, critics of the day, were saying, we can't think of an alternative. Like there's no mundane alternative that could explain where this 5% is coming from or 7%. And there's other internal interesting things that go on in these data. Most of these sessions, I don't know what percentage, but the majority of these types of sessions were done by college sophomores who were doing the experiment for credit for their psychology course. So they were only recruited on the basis of come in with somebody willing to sit down for 20 minutes and do this strange thing. So they didn't say that they had these experiences. They didn't even say they had any interest in it. They're just doing it. And you still get interesting results, somewhere between 30 and 32%. So what happens if you then start partitioning the data according to people who say that, yeah, I've had these experiences before? Well, come in with your buddy with whom you've had those experiences. And others will say, well, I'm a visual artist or I'm a writer and I get these sort of synchronicities all the time. Okay, come in and do that with your friend. Or emotionally bonded pairs of people, just who feel very close emotionally. Well, they don't get 30 to 32%. They get 40 to 70% in this experiment. So that kind of matches our concept that if these experiences are real and not illusions, then when you go into the laboratory and you exclude all of the usual explanations, the mundane explanations, well, it kind of matches that people who report these things a lot, yeah, it really is happening. It's some kind of connection between people. And so the meta-analyses have been done, and you see again and again that there are, because we don't have a good underlying mechanistic explanation yet, there is an anomaly. The anomaly is real.